Sup ladies and gentlebees, welcome to the first part of my digital painting tutorials. Today we'll look at painting something in roughly an hour, looking at painting concepts or something along those lines. So we'll get started with this. I've started out with a sketch, and then from here I'm going to use a textured brush to block in the background, some mid-tone, just so we can get an idea of the lighting and the scene. It's quite a large brush, so I'll just quickly go over the whole canvas. Use black and white tones. Again, then we'll start off with black and white at first, even though this will eventually be a colour piece, but I find it a lot easier to work in black and white to start off with, just to get the tones right, so we don't have to worry about colour straight away. So right here I'm using a textured brush to block in the whites and the dark areas. So I usually start off with light. It's just a personal preference. It's not really the right or the wrong way. I mean, this video is just to show you how I go about doing stuff. This is not the only way of painting. This is just a style. So it's, whatever you can take from it, take from it. So right now I'm carrying on with the textured brush, going over the hair, the darkest parts of the face, like that bandage. The hair is obviously going to be the lightest, seeing as the light's coming from the top of the figure. Switch brushes to, I'm going to use like a square charcoal textured brush. It's quite nice for starting off really loose, blocking in the blacks and whites again. I tend to stay away from soft round brushes, just purely because I can get around the canvas a lot easier with a square textured brush. Like if you notice, I'm just sort of darting around, working on the whole canvas instead of getting bogged down in one certain part. So we'll quickly sort of block in tones here, bearing in mind where the light is and objects that will be affecting other parts of the body. So thinking about multiple tones on that bandana, obviously because it's going to be creased and deformed, so the light's going to change. If you notice, I keep colour picking from the scene. I don't actually just use pure black and white. I'll actually paint and then continually use the colour pick tool to grab a tone. It just helps blend stuff and keep everything within the canvas, instead of picking a new foreign tone, like a pure black or a pure white. So I'm going to dart around for a bit, just establishing the light and the objects in the scene. We'll keep it loose at first, like I said, because we want to sort of get something. We'll have something decent in an hour. That's the whole sort of point of the exercise. Still using that square textured brush, going over the eyes, just get some detail on the face. So we're going to carry on now, adding tones around the face to the lightest part. Obviously the nose is going to be a bit forward, so it's going to catch some of the light from the side. Bits behind the bandana obviously will be darker, because the bandana's over the face. Going in, maybe defining some of the hair. Just keeping it quite loose at this part. I want to carry on shading until you sort of get a good idea of where the tones lay, and once you start on one area, you'll start to see that maybe another area on the other side of the canvas looks a bit lighter. So you'll want to keep on changing the values till it looks right before we add colour. So I find if you have the tonal values right before you add colour, it makes the job a lot easier for you, and obviously a lot quicker. That's the whole point of this, to get quite a speedy little painting going. So I'm going to pick some of the whites for the eyes, just to bring out that eye a little bit. It looked a bit flat before. And then some of the armour. Some of the pieces on the facial areas as well, like the bottom jaw. We want to bring some of that armour forward, so it's going to catch some of the light coming in from the left. So add in those highlights, and obviously at the side of that, of his little headpiece thing. Colour picking from the scene, so we don't end up with really ridiculous values. So I'm just going to carry on going over my piece until I feel it's time to start painting. Maybe go over some of the hairs. Starting to define pieces of the armour. You don't want to get bogged down on certain pieces. If you notice, I sort of move around the whole canvas. Because if you stick to one part and try and make that part perfect, you'll move on and then find the part that you've just spent an hour on looks really weird because you've changed the values on the other side of the canvas. So when you're painting, just try and move around the whole canvas. Get all the values in before you start adding details. The process is actually a lot quicker than you think. I mean, already we've got an image. We can see what it is and what it's going to be, and this is just using really quick, expressive strokes to dotted around the canvas. Probably working on 2 or 3 different layers. One for the background. I'll have the sketch, and then I'll be working on top of the sketch layer. Although it looks like I have a butt ton of brushes, I probably only use about a dozen of them. The other ones are there just to experiment. That's always a good thing to do. It's just play around with what you have. There's never any harm in trying something new. Even if you end up with a really crap result, I mean, there might be something you take away from it. Like right here, I'm just trying different brushes for the hair, getting some texture in there. See, I don't stay on one area of the body for too long. Don't want to bog myself down and then end up, unnecessarily spending ages on things, that doesn't really matter. Carry on adding light and dark until you feel the painting looks right. I mean, here I'm going around seeing what areas need to be brought forward and what needs to be brought back. Obviously the left side's going to be catching most of the light, so you want to try and keep that consistent. Adding some texture into the face as well. Here I'm going to start darkening up that right side of the face. It's not dark enough. Obviously it looks like a single tone. Doing the same with the hair there. Just going over it to bring some pieces forward and some backwards. Don't be afraid to use really large expressive marks at this point, because you're scared you might deform the character. You might find you make a large stroke and then you go, oh, actually I quite like that, and it also adds interest. These quite large expressive, well, in my opinion anyway. Some people like to have really tight paintings, but I mean, if you want to get something done quite speedily, don't be afraid to make huge changes to your painting as well. I mean, in Photoshop they can be easily changed. If you want if you want to make a new layer and then try and change something, if it doesn't work out, you just delete the layer. But yeah, just don't be afraid of going large. So yeah, that's it for the first part.